Welcome to a Heritage Minute special with Lieutenant Colonel retired Steve Simon, U.S. Air Force Academy Association and Foundation writer and historian.
The United States Air Force Academy is an amazing place, steeped in long blue line history and brimming over with stories. I'm Steve Simon, class of 77, and I'm here to tell them. Today I have the honor of speaking with Jim Nance, USAFA Class of 71, and Major Joe Flescher, class of 14. Jim joins me here in Doolittle Hall studio, while Joe is remote. Thanks to both of you for being here.
It's an honor to be here, Steve. And it's also a great privilege to see Joe again after 9 years or 10 years.
Yes, sir. Good to see you again.
So Jim Nance made a name for himself around here by being an amazing sculptor. Examples of his work abound at the Academy, including the Air Warrior Combat Memorial near the B-52 inside the North Gate, and on the Heritage Trail outside Doolittle Hall. How did you get into that field?
Well, it's something I've always been interested in ever since I was a kid. It used to be a hobby. You know, I'd draw and sketch, and I didn't really get into the sculpture seriously until after I'd left the service. I was with the airline, and I pretty much owe it all to my wife. She encouraged me, and she still does. She supports me tremendously on this. Oh. So she's the one that kind of got me moving on the sculpture.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, the detail in your work is simply marvelous. I invite listeners to check out the Lance Saigon sculpture in the Southeast Asia Pavilion on our Heritage Trail, a perfect example of your work. What is your thought process as you begin to create a project such as that?
Well, that's a good question. Usually it's an evolution. It takes a while. Start off with the client, like for the Saigon Memorial, it was the class of 65. Hal Estes was the lead on that. So we met many times and discussed what he was looking for, and I do some sketches, and we finally sort of drilled down to what we wanted. And then once it started in the clay, it sort of evolves there. You can only go so far with a sketch because the clay is always going to be different.
Right.
And it's a lot easier to think in clay when you're connecting your mind to your hands. Yeah. So they just sort of evolve and take on a life of their own. Okay.
Just some of the detail out there, even with the rats crawling around.
That was sort of a last minute.
that definitely gets your attention and really tells the story. So let's switch to another Southeast Asia Pavilion area, and that is the Prisoner of War exhibit. So, Joe Flescher, you're the subject of one of the most iconic works, in fact, here at the Southeast Asia Pavilion, the model for the Prisoner of War, POW. How did you get that gig?
So it all started with an email. Unfortunately, I don't have the original email, but I remember thinking it was a long shot. Email came out to all of the cadet wing and said they need a model for a special project. The picture I submitted had me with a mouth guard in because I was doing the obstacle course. And then a follow-up email said, we need pictures again of just a handful of people and no blue teeth this time. So I knew that they saw my picture. And then the next email was, please show up at Arnold Hall at a specified time. And then it was off to the races.
Nice. And you were an athlete here at the Academy?
I was a cheerleader.
Okay.
Did that my sophomore or 3-degree year up until first year.
Okay. So you had the build for it. So Jim, I understand you have firsthand knowledge of the Vietnam War and even a link with the POWs. You were a C-141 pilot and actually flew some of the men to safety during Operation Homecoming, the POW repatriation. Please tell us about that experience.
Well, when I was flying 141s, I was in McCord, and we used to
in Washington.
Yeah, we used to stage out of Clark. We'd take one airplane, 2 crews, fly over. One crew would fly it over, the other to Deadhead, and then about 2 weeks later, you'd come back, and the other crew would fly it over. And while you were at Clark, one crew would fly for one day, and the other one had the day off, and then you'd swap over. So just being in at the right place at the right time, it had nothing to do with merit or superior aviation skill. I just happened to be staging out of Clark, when the word came down that we were going to bring the POWs home.
Nice.
So we met and briefed every day for 8 days because they kept postponing it day by day by day. And then finally we had the opportunity to go in and get them. So from an operational point of view, it was just another flight.
Sure.
But of course, it was a great honor and a privilege to be able to be an eyewitness to history.
Right, yeah.
And so it made a lasting impact on me watching those guys come home.
I'm sure. I've seen some of the footage and the cheers when the aircraft probably clears the Vietnamese airspace. I imagine they waited until they were out of country. But that pure joy in those moments for everybody. So. And adding another layer of connection, I understand your father had been a POW.
Yes.
Spent time in World War II at the infamous German Stalag Luft 3, the camp there.
That's right. He was, of course, that greatest generation. You know, they went through so much without complaining about it or talking about it too much. But he flew B-17s. He was 20 years old as a pilot and shot down 3 times in 24 missions or 25 missions. First time he ditched in the middle of the English fishing fleet and they fished him out.
No kidding.
The second time they crashed in a farm field right about a couple hundred yards past the White Cliffs of Dover. They just cleared it. And the final time they were shot down over the North Sea and picked up by a German U-boat. But his experience is pretty much similar to an awful lot of people.
Yeah.
I remember reading once that the average mission life expectancy was 8 missions.
Jeez.
So his 3 times in 25, pretty much right on the average.
3 times, though. That's phenomenal. You think at some point they'd say, okay, you've done what you need to do. You can go home now. But for anyone who might not know, that Stalag Luft 3 was the camp whose exploits were featured in the movie The Great Escape in the 1960s. In fact, the superintendent from my cadet days, Lieutenant General A.P. Clark, Albert Patton Clark, was also a POW there. Did your father know
yes,
General Clark?
They were in the same bunk room.
Okay, Lieutenant Colonel Clark, I think, at the time.
I believe it. My dad told me that General Clark, Colonel Clark at that time, was the ranking POW.
I believe that's correct.
So he was always... my dad was always getting in trouble and trying to escape and being thrown in the clink. And so he was always having to report to General Clark or Colonel Clark.
Now, I know Colonel Clark was not one of the ones who were part of the actual escape. Was your father involved in the actual escape, or was...
The movie or the story was actually about the British sector.
Okay.
There were 2 sectors, British and American.
Okay.
But they escaped all the time. My dad escaped for 2 or 3 days.
No kidding.
Interestingly, the person he escaped with was a guy named Pete Edris, who was the father of my roommate during Sean Edris.
Holy cow.
And we discovered that when we were on a ZI tour at Wright Pat.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So many coincidences and overlaps. So, Joe, let us know, what was it like being a model? Probably not something you had a lot of experience with, I'm guessing.
No, the whole project was very cool when we first started, and the discussion was, okay, we need some angles from this side and some angles from this side, and I'd very vividly remember the discussion was we're gonna do it full out. So what you see, what is on the sculpture is actually what we did, right? I didn't just hold my hands behind my back. We had some rope. Because when you think about it, the Academy does a very good job of explaining the stories of the POWs. So you've got memorized, right? Fractured skull, mangled right hand, and compound fracture of the left leg, right? Yep. Everyone's got that memorized. So to me, that wasn't something that and as we were working through it, you've got to go full out on a project like that.
I got to tell a story about Joe.
Please do.
When we put that email out, we got 500 responses with selfies. So General Ron Yates was the organizer of the whole project. So
right, and he funded the whole...
I got together with him and we picked we picked final 3.
Okay.
And so Joe was one of those, and so had all 3 guys come, and I was just going to have him hold his hands behind his back. but Joe insisted on, no, let's go full out. And I was afraid he was telling his buddies to really cinch him up tight. And I was afraid he could hurt himself. And the commandant would be mad at me. But
is that like method acting, I guess, or method modeling?
It is, yes.
So that was one of the reasons after I took the photos of those three fellows back to General Yates, we decided to go with Joe, not just because of the physical attributes, because of his enthusiasm.
Demonstrated his commitment to the role.
Absolutely.
There you go. How much time did that project take?
So the project itself, it only took about 20 minutes, I think, if I remember correctly. But then I came back to the academy for the unveiling with retired General Yates and Mr. Nance, and then met a handful of the POWs there too. So
yeah, that was a great ceremony.
It was a wonderful
graduate.
I think we had
POWs came back.
25 out of the 32.
Yeah, I remember it was a remarkable event. So I'm glad you got to come back for that. All right, so we have to get into this. One of the most notable aspects of the POW sculpture is the defiant middle finger the POW is flashing. So understand there's an interesting inspiration for that.
Well, actually, that came from my dad.
Okay.
I asked him one time, what symbol or what pose would you suggest for a POW? And he immediately came back with that. Mm-hmm. And I tried to make it subtle. Obviously if a POW was caught doing that, they'd probably beat him up, so that's why the right hand is sort of below the left hand behind his back. Mm-hmm. And you sort of have to look hard to see that symbol of defiance.
But if you know it's there, you can't miss it, right?
It's funny. I did before I did the relief, I did a full round sculpture of the pose. Mm-hmm. And then I brought that to a board meeting, and I was absolutely sure I would have put money that somebody would have been opposed to the middle finger, but it was unanimously approved. Okay. Everybody loved it. And so then I went back and then re-sculpted it in the relief.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, like the rats in the Saigon sculpture, it shows what it was like. So.
That's one of the problems that Lance Saigon had. He was not only battling his physical injuries, but and the thorns that he had to cut through. He could go an inch at a time. The thorns were catching on him, but he also had packs of rats following him, and he'd fall asleep and they'd start trying to bite him. Mm-hmm. So he had it pretty tough. Wow. So that's why we put 3 rats in the Saigon sculpture.
Okay, yeah. Glad you did. So and the finger, of course, there's, like you said, that's the best way to show the defiance. So you can't do the blinking the Morse code or right. other ways that they or some of the words they use that gave a symbol that the Vietnam did.
At the dedication, the POWs asked me to do something for General Yates, so we did a cast of the fragment of just the hands in bronze. Oh, wow. And I think we'll put it on like a white base, and all POWs signed it, and we gave it to General Yates for organizing the whole project.
Well,
I think General Meckenbacher.
Ed Meckenbauer.
When he made the presentation, he said this is the first time he's been able to give a 4-star general the finger.
Perfect. So Joe, you're immortal now. Anyone can see your form forevermore. Are you happy with the final product?
Of course. So I've had 10 years to think about it, and it's still tough to find the words for the experience, right? Honored, humbled, grateful, and always happy to tell the Academy story. And then the fact that it's a POW story is just even more humbling. And then, of course, the statue came out perfectly.
Yeah, as we would expect. I should ask, how's your Air Force career going so far?
It's going great. The Air Force has given me and my family a lot. I know we said I wouldn't say where, but I'm a deployed logistics squadron commander now. And I'm loving it. Can't wait to get back home, of course, to my wife, Sarah, son, Joey, and then meet my son, Lucas. He's due here in November.
Nice.
So
congratulations.
Yeah.
Thanks. All great. And thoroughly enjoy. The Air Force has given me multiple once in a lifetime experiences. So very happy.
Well, I'm glad you're part of the ranks. So, Jim, are you working on any other exciting projects we should know about?
Well, I'm doing a few busts right now.
Okay.
I'm 4 in the process. And then I've been working with the class of 76. We're trying to develop a 50th reunion gift for them.
Oh, nice. I understand you're meeting with Fred Gregory and going to do one for Gregory Hall, which...
do a bust of Fred.
Okay. Which some of us know the building as CTEF, Consolidated Education and Training Facility.
I can never remember those acronyms.
Well, I was around when it came to be, so I remember I was with CTEF for so many, many years. So well, best of luck with those projects. Our time is just about up. Final thoughts are next. But before we do that, we have something new for you. The Heritage Minutes series and Heritage Minutes specials, like this one, are available in video and audio at our new Heritage Hub on the Association of Graduates website. Go to usafa.org/Heritage Hub and watch or listen anytime, or catch up on the Heritage Minutes you might have missed, and subscribe while you're there. Keeping up with the series is easy. Search at Air Force Grads on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and more for show announcements and updates. Joe, any other final words for our audience?
I think just thanks. So this project was definitely one of my top cadet experiences, and always happy to talk about it. And then if there's any cadets that are out there watching this, I'd say hang in there, and it's better on the other side.
It definitely is. It's a good place to be from, what I always said. So, Jim, same question. Any other final words?
Well, my wife may have gotten me into this, but I owe so much to the Academy and for this sculpture career. I put in 30 years with the airlines, and once I retired, I started getting these opportunities here at the Academy, and so all those classes and people who have supported me and helped me out.
Okay.
I owe you everything as far as this new career goes. So thank you.
Of course. So was there there was a fine arts program, I know, in the 70s when you and I were here. Joe Doris, a friend of mine from class of 74, he did some sculptures and a really nice mural. That were you involved in that at all?
No. I didn't really get into it until I was with the airline up in Minneapolis, and I was a new reserve captain on the MD-80, and it was a small fleet. They didn't use me very much, and my wife said, well, instead of hanging around the house, why don't you go back and get an art degree? So I did. I went to Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and it just sort of took off from there.
Oh, phenomenal. And we're all better for that. So, I'd like to thank both of you gentlemen for participating in this edition of the Heritage Minute podcast.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Joe, good seeing you again.
Yep.
Take care of yourself.
Same here.
Yep. Safe travels back when you get the opportunity.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm Steve Simon. Thanks for listening. Find more episodes at usafa.org/Heritage Hub.